Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, whoever you are, wherever you are, whenever it is for you. For me, it is just past midnight on Thursday, August the 29th, making this the news of the day, Wednesday, August the 28th, 2024, day 918 of Vladimir Putin's war of aggression against the people of Ukraine. I can see the peeps are coming in. Hey, PT. Hey, Eli. Hey, Lame. Cheyenne. Rob Walker. Jessica, how you doing? PH. Bobby, how you doing, Bobby? Hey, Clay Fry. Hey, Brian. Jerry O. Hey. Rocco. Hey, Russell Kennedy. How you doing, brother? Hey, Bjorn. How is everybody this evening? Hey, Mad Mike. Hey, there's Nightshade. Hey, Tisno. How's life in Croatia, baby? You're a good man, Russell. Taking one. I'll tell you, the soul of generosity and goodwill. Thanks so much. Hey, Wind. Electric crayfish. What a great way to spell that. Hey, Anthony. So the peeps are coming in. Hello, everybody. I'm Peter Alexievich, and this is the Live at 5 from Kyiv. And tonight, of course, the big story is that Russia is on fire. And boy, is it ever. The Ukrainians wasted no time at all in sending a message to Moscow that the kind of bullshit that they put us through on Monday and Tuesday is that the Ukrainians are now in a position to retaliate in kind. And the first thing that we saw happen was the Ryazan power plant burning. So there were reports of explosions, followed by a large fire on the territory of the Ryazan power plant. This is in the vicinity of Moscow and provides power to the city. Now, the official word on this from local authorities is that there is no fire, that the plant was not hit, and that it's just a grass fire due to dry conditions. That was the first thing they said. I take that back. The first thing they said was that there was no fire. Then they said that it was a grass fire outside the territory of the plant. Then they said that some repair work caused a technical fault, so there was a fire on the territory of the plant, but it was our fault, not the fault of the drones that smashed into it. I mean, come on, give me a break. So hysterical, typical Russian authorities dealing with the situation the only way they know how, deny its existence despite the overwhelming evidence. This is the cognitive dissonance of living in Russia. Your senses, the proof of your eyes tell you what's going on, but you have to believe a story that the authorities are telling you. It is bullshit of the first order, and it is on display writ large thanks to these kinds of actions of the Ukrainians. Now, the next hit was in the Kirov Oblast. That's all the way out at Kazan. That's 1,100 kilometers from the Ukrainian border, 1,100 kilometers. And that oil refinery is up in smoke. We've got reports that the fire is not under control and that it is in fact spreading. The same is true at the Rostov oil depot in the Kamensky district of Rostov-on-Don, where at least 4 tanks are aflame. Throughout the day, the number kept changing, right? It was fascinating to watch. That's at the Atlas depot, just 20 kilometers inside of Russia from the Ukrainian border. So what we saw last night were significant hits against the oil infrastructure. Now, it's important to remember that what ended World War II in the Pacific theater were the atomic bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, right? What ended the war in the European theater was Germany running out of gas. That's what ended the war in the European theater. Make no mistake. If the Russians run out of gas, you can't fight a war if your machines can't move. It's just that simple. So this, to me, in my mind, this is all good shit. Now, not only are all of these infrastructures compromised and the resources in them that are so necessary to the war effort are being depleted, it's also caused problems for local airports. With the drones in the air, the Kazan and Ryazan airports had to close. And so flights were restricted out of there. And remember, there's fuel rationing for jet fuel. So these planes don't always fly with a full tank. They fly with enough to get them there. They don't have the fuel reserves to circle the airport for 2 hours waiting for the all clear. So every plane that was in the air had to be diverted someplace. That is a pain in the ass for everybody. And so it caused some social unrest as well. Now, we have a report from Igor Shusko, who is reporting that Russia is on the verge of beginning fuel rationing for civilians. Now, we don't have any confirmation of that. It is not clear yet that this is correct. But Shushko usually knows what he's talking about, and he's got sources inside of Russia. So we could see an official policy of rationing for a country that John McCain described as nothing but a gas station with nukes. We could see them rationing their only fuel as the effects of these take hold. Now, in the Kursk direction, the Ukrainians destroyed a Sapphire electronic warfare system. Now, this is a big deal because these things are expensive. We don't know how many the Russians have, but the Ukrainians, this is the fifth one the Ukrainians have taken out. And these are important because these can send HIMARS munitions and ATACMS munitions off course. And so getting them out of the field is critical to the success of offensive operations. Down in Donetsk, the Ukrainians also took out an R-33ZH Zytel automatic jamming system. So this jams the drones that you're sending at the enemy. And so taking that out is an important technical hit on the electronic warfare capabilities of the Russian Federation and Ukraine. Good hits, and both multi-million-dollar systems. Now, here's the fog of war. We do not know what is going on in Belgorod. We don't. It would be foolish to make a claim that we did. But I can tell you what we know. Now think about this with me. We had the Kursk incursion, which is proving to be the greatest humiliation that Putin has suffered since the beginning of this war. That's huge, all by itself. Can you imagine the bad press, the pushback, and the civil unrest if suddenly two oblasts in the Russian Federation were under occupation? And of course, I'm talking about next door to Kursk, Belgorod. We had reports yesterday of potentially multiple incursions into Belgorod from Ukraine. But the reports varied wildly as to the size of the brigades and where they were. We still don't have any visibility, but the Russian mill blogger community is going crazy. They're reporting all kinds of different incursions everywhere from Shebekino right up to the Kursk border. And we do not know how much of this is true. We don't know if any of it is true. Could the whole thing be a psyop that the Ukrainians are running on the Russians by feeding them misinformation? I remember last summer, there was such a psyop against the Russian forces that I got suckered into, and I reported as fact based off what I was seeing in the Russian mill blogger reports. Turned out to be bullshit, right? A total psyop against the Russians by the Ukrainians. Could that be what's happening? Causing them to fix troops in Belgorod or even move troops there where they're not even needed? We don't know. Could it just be good old-fashioned Ukrainian operational security? Could everybody be keeping their mouths shut about another large incursion into Russia? That's entirely possible. That is entirely possible, and it is not to be ruled out. Time will tell. I don't want to get my hopes up too much. I'm hoping that it's the operational security thing. So in Kursk, in Sudza, the Russians have glide bombed their own ice rink. Now, we don't know if the ice rink was being used to quarter Ukrainian troops or more likely as a place to get Ukrainian equipment out from drone view, right? Because ice rink, big ice rink, you can drive monster trucks in there for monster truck rallies. At least anything as big as a Zamboni can get in there, that's for sure. So my guess, my total amateur guess, is that the Ukrainians were probably using it to get vehicles out of view. And the Russians hit their own ice rink in Sudza with a glide bomb and destroyed it. No word on if there was anything inside or what was destroyed. There are reports of lots of advances in Kursk, but nothing official, as operational security is at play. And the Ukrainians are doing a great job on this with operational security. We really don't know much of what's going on until a week after it's happened. Then we learn about it. And right now, it looks like officially Ukraine is claiming to control 1,300 square kilometers in Kursk, 100 plus settlements. They seem to have completely locked down the area south of the River Seine. We've seen them blow the 3 permanent bridges. Now we know, I am certain that they have blown at least 5 pontoon boats and struck at the 5 engineering teams that were putting those pontoon bridges up in place. So they clearly want to cut the supply lines, the ground lines of communication to everybody south of the Seine. They want to starve them of ammunition and food and resources and take them prisoner. The 2,700 or so Russians that are down there clearly want to take them prisoner with as little fighting as possible. Now, there were reports today of 2 more pontoon bridges, but I can't be sure that it wasn't a recycled report of the earlier pontoon bridges being taken out. If it's not, then that would put the number of pontoons taken out at between 6 and 7, with as many engineering crews as well. Not Korean engineers, Sam. The Korean engineers never did materialize. And there is no evidence to suggest that there are Korean engineers in occupied Ukraine. Or in Ukrainian-occupied Russia, for that matter. We don't know what's happening with that or why that never materialized. Most likely, I think it's just that Kim Jong-un doesn't want his people leaving North Korea. If his people leave North Korea, they are unlikely to return, right? When they see how the rest of the world lives, they have an awful hard time going back to that shit. And so it seems unlikely that anybody is going to come out of North Korea to go to Russia, unless the North Koreans don't want them back. Those are the only people that are going to get sent. And then the Russians, of course, will make sure that they don't ever come back home. That's how the Russians will use them up. Make no mistake. According to the ISW, the Russian advance toward Pokrovsk has... I got a couple more things on Kursk here. Oh, now here, dig this, right? Like, follow this. So the Ukrainians are estimating that the Russians have now redeployed 30,000 troops from the Ukrainian line or are in the process of doing so. 30,000 troops from the Ukrainian line up to Kursk. 30,000 troops. That's about how many troops Russia is able to conscript every month. It's also about how many troops Russia is losing every month. So now, this month on the front line, you got a deficit of the 30,000 lost, plus the 30,000 headed to Kursk. That's 60,000. And they've only got 30,000 coming in. So it's a net loss of 30,000. Now, let's say, because these troops, they got to be put on trains, they got to be put on trucks, they got to go 1,000 kilometers out of their way to get to Kursk. That's going to take a while. And they're going to be in the open while they're moving. Let's say the Ukrainians can interdict just 15% of them. Keep 15% of them from arriving with, 10 fingers and 10 toes. That's 25,000 that get there. It's 25,000 that gets there. What are they going to do? They're going to have to pull another 5,000 from the line. Those big troop concentrations coming in, they're going to be susceptible to HIMARS, right? And to ground-launched diameter bombs and air attacks and glide bombs. And so more are going to be lost. Every analyst that I listen to says the same thing. If the Russians want to take back Kursk, they need 50,000 men. So right off the bat, you're starting with half of what you need. The Ukrainians are going to trit that fast. And where are they going to look for the replacements? They're going to look for the front line. Now, we know they're not going to take them out of Donetsk and the Donbass because that's where the big push is. So they're going to take some from Kherson, some from Zaporizhia, maybe some from Luhansk. And that front line is going to get thin in spots. The Ukrainians are going to be looking for those spots, those weak points. And when they find them, that's where the decisive blow will come, in my opinion. If I'm right, what we're going to see over the next couple months is a constant pressure on the Russian forces in Kursk as the Ukrainians attrit them and dig in there. We're going to see a constant pressure on the front line to pull troops. And the more they pull from the front line, the hollower it gets, the thinner it gets, the more susceptible it gets to a breakthrough by the Ukrainians. And once that happens, and they can cut that land bridge to Crimea, the whole nature of the war changes. The whole nature of the war changes. Now, on the subject of isolating Crimea, a lot of you have asked about the rail line that the Russians built from Rostov to Mariupol, right? There was a lot of talk about that when the Kursk bridge comes down, we're going to need an alternative way to resupply Crimea. So the Russians went to some lengths to build a new rail line from Rostov to Mariupol. Today, or early in the morning hours of today, the Atesh partisan group in Donetsk hit that rail line, burning out the switching boxes, burning out the control panels at least 3 separate junctions on that line, and doing some other damage to the rails. It's going to take a while to fix. Now, I'm wondering, is it possible that this is an indication that we're going to see the Kursk bridge come down? Because if the Mariupol rail was the alternative supply line, and you take that out first, then you take out the Kursk bridge. They've already taken out the Kursk ferries. But now if the Kursk bridge comes down, now the supply lines are in real trouble for Crimea. And then it's just a question of cutting the land bridge entirely. Good stuff, though. In Pokrovsk, the ISW is saying that the pace of the advance is quickening. So from a couple, 2 to 3 kilometers a week, we're looking now at 3 to 5 kilometers a week, which would put them in Pokrovsk in about 2 weeks. So the clock is ticking on Pokrovsk. It is my opinion that the Ukrainians entirely intend to lose Pokrovsk. I see it exactly the same way as Bakhmut. I see it exactly the same way as Avdiivka. The Russians are fixated on taking it. They are pouring all of the lives and energy that they can into it. Nothing's going to stop them. So what do? You let them do it. You put the minimum number of guys that you can on the front line that is required to hold them back, to attrit them, to make them pay for every meter of ground. And I say this because yesterday at the Independence Conference meeting, Zelensky said that the Russians have moved 60,000 troops into Pokrovsk. They could have moved them into Kursk and gotten the Ukrainians out of Kursk, but they didn't. They moved them into Pokrovsk because they want Pokrovsk. They are just like Bakhmut, just like Avdiivka. They are totally fixated on this land grab as the definition of success for them. Zelensky said of these 60,000 troops that Ukraine was going to unalive them all. And so it seems to me that the plan is to attrit, while the Kursk offensive attrits and draws troops out of Ukraine into Kursk, hollowing out the Russian lines for a future Ukrainian counteroffensive breakthrough. Now, it's unlikely that that breakthrough will come before the rainy season. So we're looking at, and before the freeze season. So we're looking at least 4 months of this grinding attritional warfare in Kursk and on the front line before that front line is hollow enough to allow for a Ukrainian counteroffensive and breakthrough, which would put the earliest date for that at the time that the ground freezes, say in mid-January through February. It's possible we could be looking at an early 2025 winter counteroffensive by the Ukrainians. Possible. We shall see. Zelensky says the F-16s have been useful and effective already to take out missiles and drones. And I would assume that he's talking about the big missile and drone attacks on Monday and Tuesday, that the F-16s were used in some way to shoot down missiles and drones that were coming in. But there is another benefit to having the F-16s dedicated to that air defense role. It frees up the MiGs to do close ground support operations and ground target operations in Kursk and other places of the front line. So now the Ukrainians can dedicate the fleet of MiGs, which everybody knows how to fly. They're not new. They're not something that has to be integrated into the system with special protections on it. No, they can just fly them. And so they're using glide bombs from the MiGs all along the front line, the same way that the Russians are, to similar effect. Kyiv says that they're, okay, now everybody knows. When the Russians first went into Sudza, I suggested that maybe one of the targets was this gas metering station there. It's this gas metering station that 50% of the gas that goes to Europe transits through Ukraine through that meter station right there in Sudza. Then it was pointed out to me that, look, that gas pipeline goes right through Ukraine. Anytime the Ukrainians want to fuck with it, they can, right? They want to blow it up, they can blow it up. They want to stop it, they can stop it. It runs through Ukraine, so that can't be the target. Fair enough. But it's worth pointing out that the metering station is there, and it's now under Ukrainian control. The contract that allows for the transit of natural gas through Ukraine expires on December 31st of this year. The Russians want it renewed. The Ukrainians have said, go fuck yourself. That's not a direct quote. I want to point that out. Kyiv says that it has no plans to extend the gas transit deal past 2025. It's not going to happen. So Russia is making a big fuss about this because Russia doesn't want to have to find an alternate pipeline. They don't want to build new pipelines into Turkey, say, for example, to transit this gas. So what they're doing is they've got a little PR campaign going on right now, threatening Europe with higher gas prices. That if that transit through Ukraine gets shut down, which the Ukrainians are intent on doing, the Russians are threatening Europe with new gas prices, higher gas prices, if the deal is not renewed, which it is not going to be. Now, could it result in higher gas prices? Sure, it could. If they got to build a whole new pipeline to Turkey or leverage Turkish assets to get the gas to Europe, the Turks are going to want some money. So it's not impossible that it could negatively impact gas prices in Europe. The point is that the Ukrainians aren't going to have it anymore. Fucking contract is up. No more gas. We're not playing ball, right? Take your fucking ball and bat and go home. It could be on January 1st, 2025, if the Ukrainians are still in charge of Kursk, which I believe they likely will be. We could see them blow that place up. Wouldn't that be great? Some New Year's fireworks, the Sudza gas terminal just blown to smithereens. Every single day in Ukraine, civilians are unalived by Russian bombs and terror strikes. And I never mention it. I never mention it, not because I don't respect the civilians that are dying every day, but because it's depressing. It's hard to think about every day. But this, I gotta mention. An entire family in Donetsk was unalived when a Kyiv bomb hit their house. Parents in their late 40s, early 50s, a 24-year-old daughter and a 17-year-old son. All of them wiped out and their home, everything they owned, by a Fab 250 glide bomb. I will repeat what we keep saying here. Those glide bombs are launched by planes. You don't want to shoot down all the arrows, you want to take out the Archer. The Archer hides in an airbase that's within ATACMS range. There are 24 air bases within ATACMS range that if the United States just gave the Ukrainians the go-ahead, the green light to use those ATACMS on those air bases, these planes could be taken out before they launch the bombs that kill these Ukrainian families every fucking day. Vanetta Larrett, who has the Google Doc share, has email message templates to your Congress people, senators, and White House on this very subject. Every time the Russians hit Kyiv, which is Zelensky's hometown, they double tap it the next day, they hit it again. So on Monday, we saw it get hit as part of the big scale campaign and a hotel destroyed with 2 people unalived in that hotel. And then we saw it on the heels of that attack. It was hit again overnight. 5 people were injured, but nobody was unalive, thank God. Ukraine shot down another Su-25 today in the Kramatorsk region. One of the brave members of the 28th Mechanized Brigade used a man-pad, right, one of those shoulder-fired rockets that became so popular during the Afghan war. We used to give them to the Mujahideen to shoot down Soviet helicopters, remember? Well, the Ukrainians used them to shoot down Russian helicopters today. And they took out an Su-25 with one There's great video of this online. Two Su-25 screaming across the sky. Then suddenly one of them bursts into flames, starts a smoke trail, and you see the pilot eject. It appears that the pilot ejected safely, but the plane was taken out. Now, Russia had 134 of these ground attack jets at the start of the war, but it's estimated that only half of them were in airworthy condition. So that means they had about 70 that could fly. The Ukrainians have taken out 30. That should mean that the Russians are down to about 40 that can fly and 60 that they're cannibalizing to keep the other 40 flying. That something like that is probably close to the actual numbers. Telegram CEO Pavel Durov has been released from French custody on a €5 million bond. So he posted bail. He is being charged. The French prosecutor's office does intend to charge him. So we're waiting to see those charges. And I got to tell you, I'm not sure that a $5 million bond is enough for a guy who's worth $9 billion to hang around if he doesn't want to go to jail, despite the fact that he's had to surrender his passport and been told he can't leave the territory of France. He's got the resources that if he wants to go, he can go. So we're going to see, I think, very quickly whether or not Durov is in France hiding from the Russians, because I think he is. I think that he met with Putin or Putin's representatives when they were in Azerbaijan last week. We know that he was there at the same time that Putin was. And that as soon as he left that meeting, he got on a flight to France where he knew there was an arrest warrant for him. And I wonder if he doesn't think that he is safer in French custody than he is out there in the world. Get a bunch of lawyers around him, get a bunch of bodyguards around him. Right, we'll see. If he flees France, he's not running from the Russians. If he stays, I leave it to you to decide. The Kyiv Post had a great little report today on a brand new business that's expanding in Ukraine, and that's the cultivation of cotton. And one may wonder why the Ukrainians are growing cotton. Because it can be processed into nitrocellulose, which is a key ingredient in gunpowder. So the amount of cotton grown in Ukraine this year is about 3 times what has traditionally been grown. And the reason it is being grown is to make fucking gunpowder. Interesting. Very interesting. It does appear that the Ukrainian homegrown defense industry is moving right along. Oh, hey, Ant. Hey, Ant is here. Is Valley here? Who else we got from Odessa here? Anybody else here from Odessa? Ant, we have a contract now for content. The man, 63940. Yeah, I am in Ukraine. I did go to Ukraine. What is your point? Is Valley here or just you, Ant? Anybody else from Odessa here? And I'll tell you why. Let me tell you guys, the Kharkiv trip was very impactful for me. I don't know how you guys responded. I mean, generally the response to the Kharkiv series of videos was very positive, and I appreciate all of that. It seems to me that I've been in Kyiv too long, that I need to start exploring Ukraine more. Because here in Kyiv, while Kyiv suffered a lot from the initial invasion, the scars of that have been erased here. You don't see it, you don't feel it, not like you do in Kharkiv. And in Odessa, where the ports have been hit so hard, the sense of the country at war must be far more palpable. on the street every day. And so, Ant, I'm interested in trying to come to Odessa, yes. Now, it occurs to me that the kids are back in school. It's a beach town. I'm hoping that maybe places will get much cheaper in the next few weeks. But Ant, if you have some ideas about places to stay, or Valley, if you're here, or anybody else in Odessa is here, if you can help me find a place that I can afford, then maybe I check bus tickets round trip are about $70. So last week when I went to Kyiv, I had a lot of support, right? Chris Carter, Marilyn Fuller, Roy Daniels, Leo Ring, Tom Bates, and David Frazier all contributed to make that trip possible. If there are people here who would want to see me go to Odessa, the PayPal is in the bio description. And Ant, if you can shoot me a direct message, if you have any ideas about where I might be able to find a place to stay on the cheap, hit me up, please. Thank you, Ant. I really appreciate it. And maybe, guys, if I can get a little bit of help, I can get to Odessa for a little bit, and we can take a look at Odessa the way that we did Kyiv. And, you know, I don't know, I did what, like a dozen Kyiv videos? And I was there for 24 hours. If I could spend a few days in Odessa, I bet I could get you a good feel for it and how the city is doing. And Ant, we could have coffee. We could sit down. I love meeting people from the Tickety Talk. Matthew Saville, who is from the Royal United Services Institute, which is a kind of a London-based royal think tank that advises the government on security, international affairs, and war, well, defense, he believes that the new Ukrainian ballistic missile, which we don't know anything about, only that it exists, may be based on the Soviet Tokcha missile program. Now, he thinks it's likely based on that Tokcha missile program because the Ukrainians would have access to all of that technology. They would have engineers that could replicate that technology. He gave a long list of reasons why he thinks it's probably based on that or something like it. Particularly the range and capability of those weapons would be exactly what Ukraine needs right now if the United States and Britain won't untie their hands with ATACMS and Storm Shadows. So that's his opinion. This is hysterical to me. Moscow, which thumbs its nose at all international standards, is now appealing to the International Atomic Energy Agency to take a more objective and clearer perspective on nuclear security in light of the catastrophic path the Kyiv regime is pushing the world toward. The Kyiv regime is pushing the world toward. The hypocrisy of the Russian position is not to be believed. The Russians are making the claims that the plant has been targeted multiple times by Ukrainian artillery and drones. This is their claim, right? You can make up your own mind about its veracity. They are also claiming on this subject, in a totally unrelated story, to have found within 5 kilometers of the Kursk nuclear power plant a HIMARS launcher that they defused. That's exactly what they said in the... Now, that's not how that works. But that's what they claim. That is the claim that they are making. And there you have it. All right, I want to thank Ballerina, who is the sponsor of Tonight's Alive. Thank you, Ballerina, for all that you do. Ballerina is a major bedrock supporter of the channel and has really been helpful to the channel in times of need. Thanks to the moderator team, best moderator team on the Tickety Talk, Cheyenne, Vanetta, PT, Jay, and Travis. Hey, Hey, KC. Well, I'll tell you, I slept like a dream last night. Solid 8 hours last night, but the 2 nights before, not a lot of sleep, pal. Not a lot of sleep. Oh, air raids and drones and missiles, oh my. North Korean, Iranian, and Russian, oh boy. It wasn't it, Ant? I mean, I woke up at one point and realized I had just slept uninterrupted for 5 hours straight. I saw something about the rubber-coated van. And, I mean, it just looked more flammable to me. I don't know. Kharkiv is having trouble today, David. David's saying pray for Kharkiv. And he's right. I didn't mention it, and I should have, honestly, in the main news. Kharkiv got the power infrastructure there. Because we know that about 3 or 4 months ago, the Russians destroyed all 4 of the thermal power plants that supply Kharkiv with power. So a solution to get Kharkiv power had to be worked out, and that's been going well. They haven't had regular ongoing blackouts for some time. They are back to regular blackouts after attacks on the power infrastructure on Monday and Tuesday. They're getting hit now, David is saying. Do we know by what? We have not had an air alarm here in Kyiv. There was one earlier today, but not in the last hour or two. Oh, the source is Twitter. Well, let's see what other sources we can find on that then. Hey, Akisak Trav, how you doing, brother? Yeah, no alerts in Odessa either. It would be very unusual for Kharkiv to be getting hit without alerts in Odessa and Kyiv too. So I'm not sure I would jump right on that. Thanks for the donut. Boy, I'd kill for a Krispy Kreme right now. I would kill for a Krispy Kreme, boy. Yes, I would. All right, we got 15 minutes, guys, for Q&A. So questions, comments, points of observation, or personal need, anything from anybody. David is right, says Ant. What's your source, Ant? The F-16 in Ukraine are equipped with most advanced stealthy systems. Do you know that? I don't know that to be true. I know that the last batch of F-16s to be offered to Ukraine were from the Norwegians, if I'm not mistaken, and they have as much of those capabilities as any F-16 has. However, it's my understanding that none of them will be transferred to Ukraine until at least 2025. That's my understanding, Win. Yorkshire Tea, the power's been in and out all day. Now, I got it set up so that the router is running on battery power, not the grid. The lights are on battery power, not the grid. And so if the power goes out, the live should continue uninterrupted, just a little more in shadow. Your home is 2 blocks away from a Krispy Kreme. Bavarian cream is one of my favorites. You got a friend in Kharkiv. And what are they saying? I mean, is it drones and missiles? Is it Pantsir? Because you're within Pantsir range. Do we know? Hey, Laurel. Putin warning once again, World War III if West allows them to use long-range missiles. Casey, it's bullshit. World War III has already started. It is 1939, and this is Czechoslovakia, baby. Fucking anybody who doesn't appreciate that is not paying attention, in my opinion. And David is saying his source was Kate in Kyiv. Can Ukraine handle the 30,000 soldiers redirected to the north? Clay, the analysts that I listen to are saying that it's foolish to send 30,000 troops when you need 50. So people like General Ben Hodges, people like Philip Ingram, people like Matthew Seville, they're all saying the same thing. They're saying you need 50,000. And so if they send 30,000, the general thinking seems to be that ain't enough. Just like with what they sent to take Kharkiv, they sent 32,000 in that Kharkiv invasion, and they didn't get past Vovchansk. They didn't have the men. They don't have the men. Hey, Weibo. Weibo and Ballerina both had live sponsorships this month because they joined the Patreon. I think at the mother level or higher, mother or ninja level. And so you get a live sponsorship with each of those. You too can get a live sponsorship by joining the Patreon at the mother level or higher. Does the Quran teach you how to make explosives and hide them in tunnels under schools and hospitals? No, that's in the anarchist cookbook. Any more news from the Belarus border? Yeah, Tony, fucking Lukashenko's full of shit. He's got no troops at the Belarusian border. The Ukrainian border guard service is saying that with the exception of some equipment movement, they're seeing nothing to disturb anybody. He's not doing it. Now, it could be that he changed his mind after his call with Zelensky yesterday. It is being reported that Zelensky laid the law down to him and told him not to bring anything within firing range of Ukraine, or he would be fired upon. Now, I don't know that he said that exactly. The reporting indicates that something like that was said. And it appears to have worked because it appears that he is not moving people to the border. It is potato harvest season. He sent all the troops at the border to harvest potatoes. 35 Patriot air defense systems for Ukraine, then develop more long-range missiles in Ukraine. Yeah, geez, great. That would be great. Do you have an extra 30 Patriot air defense systems? Since right now we're working with probably 5, maybe 6. It would be great if we could find another 30. I don't know how that's going to happen. But this country needs 26. They according to the Kyiv folks, Zelensky says he needs 26 to cover the country. And we can't even get 8. Do not send patriots anymore. Just close the sky and that's it. Simple. We've got a no-fly zone west of the Dnipro letter to Congress, the Senate, and the White House for anybody that's interesting. Hey, Joey the Lips. The F-16s have been refitted and upgraded. New electronic warfare, maybe some lower radar cross-section improvements, making them harder to detect. What else? New hard points for carrying a variety of different missiles, not just the missiles they were originally designed to carry. But they're not going to consistently have those upgrades because they're coming from 4 different countries. Unless they're being sent to the U.S. to be upgraded, which I'm unaware that that's happening. I don't know that that's true. How's the water and power supply in Kyiv? Good. I mean, all things considered, Nicholas, right? We just had two massive missile and drone attacks that targeted that supply. And so I had power. Well, the power came on about 2 hours ago, I'd say, about 2 hours. And it had been off for maybe 4 or 5. And then it had been on, say, for 4 or 5 hours before that, and off for 4 or 5 hours before that. So it's okay. And I'm lucky because I'm in a building with a water reserve, right? We have a reserve on the roof. So every time there's power, that reserve gets full. And then we have this great big 1,000-gallon tank or whatever that we can draw off through the day. So as long as we, conserve, we have water. And then I also have a gas range so I can cook. I just need a match. How come you don't have a fan blowing on you? Because I don't own a fan, Kibble and Bits. That's why. The apartment did not come with one. And I am not spending money on things that I'm just going to leave in Ukraine. So investing in a fan when the winter is going to be here soon does not make sense to me. How do you live with curfews and random power? How do people work? It's a challenge, Jedi. It's a challenge. Now, for me, what I did was I set the live to be at the beginning of curfew so that I knew I would always be home for it. And it's a good time, right? It's 5 in New York. A lot of Europe and the United States can tune in at this time. And so you try to make it work for you. The power cuts were hard at first. I couldn't get anything fucking done. Then the Patreon supporters and Dutch Cossack in particular came to my rescue and sponsored a couple of power packs, and Tony Takiri gave me a ring light. And so then with those simple mechanisms, I am able to work consistently in spite of the power outages. So you figure out a solution. That's what you do. Necessity is the mother of invention. Just like the Ukrainians are figuring out new solutions to warfare every day, the population is figuring out new ways to live every day in light of the pressures on them here. I got to tell you, though, for anybody in Russia who thinks this is going to help break the Ukrainian spirit, you could not be more wrong. It only makes the Ukrainian spirit the sense of shared suffering. It brings everybody together. Nobody's shouting at the shopkeeper because they can't process transactions fast enough. Everybody understands there's no fucking power. It's going to take a while, or it's cash only, or it's this or that. And everybody's in it together. There is nothing that binds people together like shared suffering. And so the idea that this is going to break Ukraine is a delusion. It's an absolute delusion. Huge explosion reported right now in Rostov after yesterday's hit. Now, yesterday's hit was on the Atlas oil depot, right? That's the one in Rostov? Yes, that's the one in Rostov. Now, it could be, my hope would be that they sent a couple of drones at the kerosene tanks at Prolatarsk. Prolatarsk has been burning for 10 days. The last 8 tanks there are full of jet fuel, airplane fuel, kerosene. Hit that when airline fuel is already being rationed. That's a good hit. And it would make quite a boom. Well, Jedi, shared suffering in the United States is non-existent. We are every man for him. And Jedi, that's because we are completely spoiled in the United States. We are so spoiled that we think a mask mandate during a pandemic is a civil rights issue, not a contagion issue. We are so spoiled that we think not being able to openly hate speech based on color, based on sexual orientation, that's a restriction of freedom of speech. We are so spoiled in the United States that we think not being able to order a pizza with the toppings we want on it is goddamn Stalinism, which is the way it is here, and I hate it so much. I can't tell you. It is so fucking annoying to me. You try to order anything custom, they tell you to go fuck yourself. It's crazy. All I want is some eggs and bacon and toast. I do not need a salad. I do not need Bavarian sausages. I do not need fucking cherry tomatoes. I just want some eggs, bacon, and toast. Could I have that? And you can keep everything else. Charge me the same. No. They bring it all to you. So we're spoiled that way. And that's my ironic tongue-in-cheek example of how I am thus spoiled. So there is no doubt that we don't know shared suffering in the United States. And it's a problem because we don't understand the specialness of our place in the world. We don't. And you know what? I would argue on the subject of the specialness of the United States in the world, because we are special. And we've forgotten it. The whole basis of a society in which all men are created equal and entitled to equal protection under the law is a liberal notion that has driven American success by turning the typical pyramid of the absolute ruler, the king at the top, tells everybody how to live and what to do, to empowering the average person so that we can all benefit from the collective intelligence of all of us. That liberal democratic notion was something that both parties, the Republicans and the Democrats, had agreed on for 80 years. And it resulted in the New Deal. It resulted in Social Security. It resulted in a healthy union environment and improved conditions for workers. It resulted in a capitalist marketplace where the men on Henry Ford's conveyor belt line could say to the boss, "Hey boss, I had an idea. You know, I do this same thing every day, but I think if I did it this way, I could do twice as many." "Oh yeah, you think so, Paul? Let's give that a try." That if you empowered your workforce, you could drive improvements into the system from the ground up. That is the liberal notion of Western democracy. And the far right in the United States has given up on that. And instead they want a strong man. They want a man who's going to tell them what to do. That where everything is driven from the top down. And dissent and discussion and collaboration is verboten. Thrown out the window. What the Kursk invasion shows us is the failure of the autocratic system. That when you have a system where everything has to come from the top down and initiative is punished, you can't respond to changing conditions. By the time the Kremlin finally has a plan for how to deal with Kursk, the situation on the ground will be so different that their plan will be fucking pointless and will do nothing but get a lot of Russians killed. Because that's how all their plans are going so far. When you got to send it up the Ukrainians, they're empowered down to the sergeants. The sergeants see something changing out on the battlefield. They can make decisions that will save the lives of their men. That's not happening for the Russians. "Oh, boss, something changed." "Oh, okay." "Hey, boss, something changed." "Oh, okay." "Hey, boss, something changed." "Oh, something changed." "Herr Putin, something changed." Motherfuckers, by the time Putin makes up his mind or gets a plan together, everybody's going to be dead. That's how that's going to go. Thanks, user telephone number. So what Kursk teaches us is that the Russian system is a failure and the Western system is a success. No matter what other lessons we take out of this thing, and there will be lots of lessons that come out of this thing, that should be the one that we all remember. Because there it is. There's the evidence, writ large across the page of history, that Putin and his methodologies, Trump and Trumpism, are failures. They are a failure in the marketplace of ideas and should be rejected by all thinking people. Well, gosh, guys, everybody's working so hard on 100,000. I feel like I shouldn't give up until we hit it. Even though I know 50,000 of it is Lars. He's probably had to check out and come back in 7 times already. Am I right, Lars? Is that about right? I'm on it, Eli. I'm staying, Sam. I'm staying. Honest to God, Bobby, who wants that? And you know, the irony of it is that they call us the sheep. Whatever their orange Cheeto Jesus says to them, they believe, no matter the facts. They are fact proof. That's a fucking sheep. That's a sheep. 103,000. Unbelievable. You guys are the best. You guys are just the best. And it is 103, so that's just about within the hour. So that's really, really something. Thank you, everybody. 401k next. What I wouldn't give to have a 401k. All right, so again, thanks to our sponsor, Ballerina. Ballerina, you are the best. I don't know what I'd do without you, man. There are several people here who have been incredible bedrock supporters of the channel. Certainly the moderator team, Vanetta, Cheyenne, PT, Jay, and Travis, who are here almost every single night doing this for nothing but my deep and abiding gratitude. And Nightshade with the Peters Peeps public page where all these lives get posted after they're done if you ever miss one. Thank you, Ant. Ant, send me a note. Well, let's talk about Odessa. And big thanks to Lars, who has the Discord server. Thanks, Big Red, for the chilies. You know I'm a fan of the hot peppers. Big thanks to Lars, who has the Alexievich archive and the Discord server. Thanks, Ant. And for anybody that is interested in seeing Odessa through my eyes and maybe getting me down to Odessa for a few days, the PayPal is in the link. If I could get a little support with that, I think I could go sometime in September. So let's see. I'd like to make that happen. Thanks, Bernie. Thank you, Alex. Appreciate you all. Guys, I can only be here for you because you're here for me. And a bunch of people today in the thing is saying about hard work. You know, if you love what you do, you never work a day in your life. A lot of hard work goes into these lives, no joke. But I consider it a privilege to serve in this capacity. And I'm deeply grateful to all of you that make it possible. Wow, I look fabulous. Denang me, why don't you get a rope and hang me? It is a record-breaking night, Nicola, it is. It is. Good night, Titch. Thank you. Thank you. All right, PT, good night. Make it a great day, everybody. Thanks.